So welcome everyone to the November Reclaim Community Meeting. This will be our last this year, but we have a really exciting guest speaker lined up. So I'm just going to give him a quick introduction before we dive right into things. So we're joined today by Eric, who's the Senior Director of Organizational Transformation at Addgene. And Addgene, as you may know, is a non-profit plasmid repository facilitating researchers by exchanging genetic material between labs all over the world. And Eric's actually been with them for quite some time, about 17 years, I believe, which makes him very well placed to tell us all about what's happened in Addgene's history, as well as the roadmap coming ahead. Prior to life at Addgene, he was found in the academic setting. So he did his postdoc at Harvard University and his PhD in genetics and molecular biology at the University of North Carolina. But today, as it is Addgene's 20th birthday this year, we're going to turn to Eric to give us a bit more insight into what Addgene has learned over the years and what they continue to do for the future. So thanks, Eric. Shall we let you take it away?
All right, thank you. And you can see the presentation now, right?
Yes, so we can see the presentation now.
All right. Thanks. All right, thank you for having me today. I appreciate the invitation. I always like talking about Addgene, and as I was telling Yankei and Sabella, as I was putting this together, it was a really nice walk down memory lane for me. So we already just got a brief explanation of what Addgene was. We are a global nonprofit repository at a very simple level. People give us plasmids. We store them in the repository. They can be new plasmids. They can be plasmids that people have modified. And we put them through a quality control process and curate them and put them on our website. And then anybody from around the world can come to our website and order them. So that's sort of the very simple version. I'm going to walk you through sort of how we got to that point. So Addgene was founded in 2004 by Melina Fan, her brother Kenneth Fan, and Benji Chen, who's actually Melina's husband. So it was a family affair at first. And the three of them sort of covered three different bases. Melina was the scientist, her brother Ken was the business person, and Benji was the software engineer. And then just as a quick anecdote, it's not my anecdote, it's Melina's, but the way that Addgene came about is she was doing her postdoc at Harvard, and one of her benchmates complained that he'd asked for a plasmid from a PI, and took forever for him to get it. And then when he did finally get it, it was not even the right plasmid that he requested. And he said, sort of off the top of his head, there really should be a repository for these types of things, so this type of thing doesn't happen. And Melina took that idea and ran with it with her brother and her future husband. And the rest is kind of history, because she thought, yeah, there should be a repository. So it was founded in 2004. The first plasmid was requested in September of 2004. This is a screenshot of Addgene's very first website. So this even predates me. I started at Addgene in 2008. It's pretty simple. We didn't really know what we were doing. I still don't know why there's like binary numbers up at the top of the header there. It was just sort of data-like, I guess. So they put that up there. We didn't know anything about content design or anything like that back in those days, but it did the trick. People understood what they were supposed to do. And there were ways to both order things and submit plasmids. We've come a ways since then. Our website, we basically kind of update our website every 2 to 4 years, I would say, based on best practice in UI, UX, and content design and that type of thing. We have whole teams of people who are working on that now. So I'd like to think that it's easier to use than it was back in 2004. And just so you know, the format of this is kind of me giving that historical context and then sort of fast forwarding a little bit. So I'm going back and forth here a little bit between the past and the present. Um, so, as I said, I joined Addgene in 2008, and, we saw steady growth, but it was relatively slow growth for a while. The overall organization, we stayed at between 10 to 12 people. And then in 2012, things changed pretty dramatically with the first CRISPR plasmids. So we were fortunate in that we were right down the street from the Broad Institute where, George Church and Feng Zhang, two of the pioneers in the CRISPR field were working, and Jennifer for Doudna on the West Coast, deposited with us. And we were really fortunate that these people who knew they had a groundbreaking technology decided to share them the way they did and to share them through Addgene. So these are some tables, some data just showing both CRISPR deposits and requests through the years. And I realize these numbers are kind of hard to see here, so I'll try to just show you what you're seeing. So 2012 were the very first deposits. And then this is cumulative, but over the years, this goes up to 2022, where we have over 15,000 different CRISPR plasmids, that includes base editing plasmids over the years. So a steady, every year we get another batch of these plasmids. And this is showing the requests here. You see the requests going from around 2013. There's a few thousand, and then I probably don't need to tell this group of people that this technology really changed how a lot of people did biology. And Addgene played a role in how quickly it was disseminated around the world. And so now we're up to 2022, and we've distributed up to what this goes up to, and we've distributed over 250,000 of these plasmids all over the world. And one of the other interesting graphs or tables we like to show is this one, because one of the things that we think is important in terms of what we do as an organization is, most for-profit companies sort of rotate the crops of catalog items, basically. So they will launch a plasmid line. It'll be there for 2 or 3 years, and then they'll discontinue it and move on. Addgene is, besides being an e-commerce site, is also an archive, which means we don't take things offline unless a depositor asks us to for some reason. So what this graph is showing is these are the CRISPR plasmids by their deposit year. So 2012 is blue, up to 2023, and these are the requests for those plasmids. And what you can see is up to 2023, we're still getting people who are requesting plasmids from that were deposited, 10, 11 years ago. So people can go back and look at these papers that were published, in 2016, and use the exact same plasmids that those PIs deposited back then, and try to reproduce whatever those results were. And so that's an important part of what I think Addgene adds as an archive, is that reproducibility, so people can use those original plasmids from the papers. And now, we have even though we were founded in 2004, sometimes people will deposit plasmids that are even older than that. So we have things in the repository that are 30 plus years old, so people can use, theoretically, pretty much the exact same plasmids that were published decades ago. So another thing that was launched shortly after the CRISPR boom was our blog. This milestone here on our little chart is from February 2016, so about 3 years after CRISPR. And the blog itself was was launched in 2013, but we started really getting traction with it a few years later. And so this is when we started getting about 50,000 views per month of our blog. And so we consider our blog part of our educational content, which is free content. So fast forward to today, our blog is still very active. It gets over 130,000 views per month. We also have a number of scientific protocols on our website, which also are around 130,000 views per month. We've launched a number of ebooks, ebooks on plasmids, CRISPR, fluorescent proteins, viral vectors. One that's not included in this is our antibodies ebook, which we just launched about a month ago. And then we also have a science career guide, which is where we've invited experts in to talk about, various STEM, mostly biology careers, everything from, being a journal editor to being a product manager, several different types of careers. We also have a very active YouTube channel with about 40,000 views per month, with over 120 videos. And we also, another resource that we probably don't talk about enough is our scientific support team, where I worked on that team myself for many years, for almost 7 years. And that, this is a group of PhD scientists who answer people's technical questions about what plasmids to use for their experiments, where to find things, how to find things. And this is, they handle over 50,000 queries a year. And some of those take a long time. So we do a lot of support for the community, both through our free educational content and through our technical support team. So around that same time in 2016, we launched our first new service that kind of went beyond just plasmids, and that was our viral vector service. And the way this worked was basically we had a number of lentiviral. One of our most popular plasmids hypes over the years was lentivirus. And at the time, AAV was also getting popular as a viral vector delivery mechanism. And so we launched our viral service in 2016. I will say we still have some lentiviral viruses, but that is not as a common delivery system anymore. AAV has sort of surpassed it in a lot of ways. So I'm just showing a screenshot of our AAV page. They fall in a number of different categories. I would say our dreads and a lot of our fluorescent protein controls are quite popular, optogenetics as well. And we've put a lot of effort into making these easy to find. We have a lot of different serotypes, so you can choose, you can go through our viral service and choose, your applications, your tags, and your serotypes, and hopefully, if our search engine works well, you'll be taken to something that applies to you. And one of the reasons why I think this service took off as well as it did is because, at least in the US, I can't speak for the rest of the world, in the US, a lot of our bigger universities have viral vector cores. But that still leaves dozens, if not hundreds, of universities that don't have their own in-house viral vector cores. And in some ways, Addgene is supplementing those universities that don't have those in-house core facilities. And so I think we've become a good resource for the universities that don't have those internal resources. And again, this is just showing a graph showing some of our the different serotypes of AAV. And I apologize if people aren't familiar with AAV and don't know what a serotype is. I wish I had more time to expand on all of this, but I'm trying to cover a lot of bases today. I'm happy to try to answer questions about this if you have them afterwards. But this has become a very popular delivery mechanism for a lot of things. And this is where we really started to make we'd been very active in the genome engineering community for years at this point. But it wasn't really until we started working with the AAV that we really started making more of an impact within the neuroscience community, because this is one of the ways AAV is one of the popular means of delivery in the neuroscience world. And that's really where we started working with the US-based Brain Initiative. So we've made several tools through them. And this is a pretty close number. We're shipping about 1,500 viral units every month, and we have over 750 viral items available now, and we ship to 45 countries. So not quite as much of a reach as our plasmids. It is a little bit more difficult to ship viral vectors than it is plasmids. There are a few more barriers, but we are shipping to a lot of countries around the world. So speaking of virus, I've talked about Addgene's impact on the genome engineering community a little bit, on the neuroscience community. I think one of the areas that we as an organization felt very strongly about in terms of, or we were very proud of the fact that we were able to help to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. So as with many people, as with many labs in the world, Addgene had to sort of shut its doors down briefly in March of 2020. But we didn't stay closed for long. And that was because we realized fairly quickly that we had some plasmids in our archive that very few people had ever ordered before. Some of them had never been ordered, but suddenly they were very relevant to studying COVID-19. And at the same time, we had a number of people in the labs that were ramping up their COVID-19 research and wanted to deposit and share their plasmids as quickly as possible. So what you see here is the number of plasmid requests. Obviously there's nothing in March of 2020, but we opened our lab up fairly shortly, really by the end of, or by April, we were shipping again after a few weeks being shut down. And you can see that these requests, this is just through July of 2020 that we shipped 7,000 plasmids related to COVID within just those couple of months, and that continued to ramp up. I don't have the numbers much past this. I'm sure it plateaued, but we got a lot of support from the community in terms of the fact that we were able to be reactive and help out to disseminate these very important tools as quickly as possible to move us towards to treatment and vaccines. And we still have a dedicated COVID-19 coronavirus resource page on our website. So it's not just, we do have a lot of links to the actual plasmids. We also have some pooled libraries for the spike proteins, and then we also have resources for both protocols and research articles. So this was a lot of work. If you can plan ahead for this type of resource, that's always helpful. We had to be very reactive. So for those, I would say 6 or 7 months, we put everything else we were doing on hold to create and to create these resources. And though I hope we don't have to do that again, it's comforting to know that we can do it and that we can make an impact very quickly when there's essentially a worldwide emergency situation. So our next big milestone, so we've been doing viral vectors and plasmids for quite a while. The next area that we decided to move into, and this was partially because of basically requesting scientists saying that there was a need for this, is recombinant antibodies. So for those of you who have used antibodies before that are not recombinant, you know that sometimes one of the challenges with that is, if you're relying on antibodies coming from animals, from batch to batch or lot to lot, you can get some variability. And because what Addgene does is the services that we want to build are plasmid based, and recombinant antibodies are a way to do that. They are plasmid based. So, and the nice thing about recombinant antibodies is that they do help with reproducibility with any kind of antibody work. So we felt that this was an area that we could move into. We were working with the Brain Initiative on this. So we started this process in 2022 and launched our first recombinant antibodies last year. I'm not going to walk you through this entire poster, of course, but this is just to show we are working with this neuroscience antibody open resource community, which is a community that helped both, deposit our first recombinant antibodies plasmids with us, and also basically helped us create the process of antibody production in our lab. So this was basically a whole new team within the organization. They get their own space. They have their own dedicated team to help us really figure out how do we make antibodies, how do we make it scalable within the organization. So this was a big endeavor. And this was the other notable thing here, something that I forgot to mention, is that all the plasmid work and all the viral vector work, that was funded with revenue that we generated by the fee that we charge for requests. So it was essentially self-funded. Everything came from our internal money. And we didn't, just to sort of give you a little glimpse into the financial history of Addgene, we started in 2004 with loans, basically. And it wasn't until I had actually been here for I think it was my first year, within the first year of 2008, that Addgene went in the black based on we started paying for all of our costs and paid off our loans. So it took about 4.5, 5 years before we were really self-sufficient in terms of the paying for everything with the revenue that we generated through fees. When we launched antibodies, that was the first time that we said, this is a new service that we want to launch, but we don't really want to, we weren't really in a position to use our revenue for what was going to be essentially all these things, creating a whole new team and a lot of new lab equipment and everything like that was going to cost more than we were comfortable risking with our revenue. So this was the first time that we applied for a grant. And we worked with the Trimmer Lab at UC Davis, and we applied for a grant with them. And so that money, we basically used that money. There was also a small grant from Chan Zuckerberg that we used. So we used that money to really launch this service to decrease our risk as an organization to pay for that launch. With the idea that eventually it would start paying for itself. But, we decreased the risk by applying for grant. And that was the first time that we really applied for a grant before and used that to supplement our monetary resources. So that was a big first step for us. So the other big change that came with recombinant antibodies, and this really starts my segue into sort of our strategy for the future, is really looking for partners and collaborators for helping us create the tools that we want to ultimately distribute through our website. And one of the groups that I worked with over the last few years was the Institute for Protein Innovation, which I'm just going to call for IPI. So the IPI has been around for roughly 5 or 6 years now, and they're another nonprofit organization based here in the Boston area, and they have quite a bit of funding to create collections of recombinant antibodies, and they're really trying to target the types of antibodies that aren't available in other places where they've seen a demand for it, but there aren't. Obviously, the antibody field is fairly competitive. So they're really their mission is to create recombinant antibodies and fill gaps in sort of a worldwide antibody collection. And so they're making the antibodies, but they talked to us to help distribute them because we have this distribution network set up around and where we can ship around the world. So this is going to be an ongoing partnership for them that, you know, we work very closely with them to sort of both for their distribution and also some of their marketing, but they're really doing the development side over at IPI itself, and then they actually ride their bikes over sometimes to deposit these plasmids and put them into the system, and then we help them ship it out over the world. And we also you know, they also have the opportunity to tap into, we have, you know, at this point, we have our content design team and a curation team that can really help them, that they don't have those resources yet as a relatively young organization. So we're able to really share expertise back and forth, and that's been really interesting to watch. And see how that works out. So this is a new type of working relationship, I would say, between Addgene and IPI. But I'm excited, having played a part in that part, setting up that partnership. I'm really excited to see what other opportunities we have with other types of organizations. So this is a snapshot of where we are right now. These are relatively up-to-date numbers. I think I got some of them from just a few days ago. So we do have over 150,000 plasmids in the collection right now. That number, it's hard to keep it up to date because it literally changes every day. You know, at any given day, I get a feed showing what new deposits are coming into the repository. And you know, we have probably 3 to 4 new deposit kit requests every day, and so we're adding new things to the catalog daily. We have about 940 viral vectors that we distribute, a little over 200 antibodies, a number of pooled libraries and kits. The other thing that I'm going to talk about very briefly here is our data hub. So one of the things that we're still working on and trying to set up, and this was also through Chan Zuckerberg money, is a way for people to use our products, particularly our viral vectors and our antibodies, and share some of the data that they got from them. So a few years ago, we created our data hub, and this is specifically for people who have ordered AAV virus from us or recombinant antibodies. And this is a place where you can contribute data, even if it's negative data, because this is part of our application validation process at this point. So if you've used our viral vectors, if you've used antibodies that you've requested from Addgene, you can submit data about it. We'll give you a DOI. So it's citable. And this is a place where people can go and see how other people have used some of the viral vectors and antibodies that you can request through our website. So, you know, we've got in our AAV section, we've got about 150 what we call reports so far, and you can see the actual data there. There's about 300 or so, I believe, in the recombinant antibody section. So this is something we're still working on, but we're hoping that it continues to gain traction because we think this is a valuable data resource for the communities of people that use Addgene. So again, just a few more numbers here. We have over 6,000 depositing labs. We're sharing over 160,000 reagents, so that's including the viral vectors and the recombinant antibodies and plasmids combined. Well over 2 million requests, and then we're shipping to 111 different countries. It's always exciting when we get a new country now because it doesn't happen as frequently as it used to. But now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's coming next. So we have a new service that's launching in January that we're calling Packaged on Request. So it's nested within our viral vector service. And what this will really entail is people can go on our website, because even though we have several hundred viral vectors, we have a lot more viral vectors, plasmids that we have not made into viral vectors. And what people will be able to do with this is find a viral vector. If they want us to make that virus for them, they can submit a request to do that. We review that request, and because there's some legal things that are involved in making viral vectors, we can't just necessarily do it with every single plasmid that we had, every viral vector plasmid in the repository. So we do have to have a legal sign off from the depositing institution. And then we'll make that for them. So this goes back to that concept of a core facility, basically. So it just opens up that viral vector service to really as many of our viral vector plasmids as possible. So we're not making inventoried units that sit in our freezers, but we're actually making them by request. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility for people who are using our viral vector service in terms of which viruses we can actually make for them. And they can choose from a variety of serotypes for that. So now I'm just going to kind of talk about sort of this is our little bubbles of the different types of people that we work with, and what I would say broadly is our Addgene community. So this is just to give you some insights into what we'll be working on over the next few years. So our depositors have always been, and I think will always be, a very important part of what Addgene does. Part of our mission is to archive plasmids. But one thing I did not mention is that, we have 150,000 plus plasmids in our repository, but there are tens of thousands of plasmids that have never been requested before and probably won't be requested for whatever reason. And that's okay. It just means that the number of catalog items that we have that actually generate revenue is really a fraction of the overall archive. And it does cost money to archive plasmids and to curate them and to put them through quality control. So one of the things that we have to be thoughtful about over coming years is making sure that we do, we have to make enough money to keep our doors open, basically. So really trying to find that balance between being a mission purpose-based archive and also being an e-commerce business is important for us to do that. But it's important for us to maintain that service to our depositors. And so that's something that we want to be very transparent about with people as we think about how we're going to do that. I haven't talked a lot about tech transfer today, but it is a big part of what we do, and we are considered leaders, I would say, in the tech transfer field, because we do have material transfer agreements with what we do, so with universities like that. So I'm not going to get too much into that right now, but we will continue, I think, we will continue to work with tech transfer organizations across academia and industry. And that's really we really consider ourselves leaders in that field, and we'll hopefully continue to foster that. So our requesting scientists are a really important part of what we do. Obviously, they're the ones who are ordering from us, and one of the things that we want to do for them is work with them to identify gaps in our collection. So if there's an area, a scientific area that we can fill in, I hope we can, or we'll work with our users to do that. And the other thing that we think we're going to grow from that package on request service that I just described is really more of a custom service for the scientists who use us. And so what does that mean? So a lot of times people will come and talk to our sci support team and they'll say, I need a plasmid with, this tag, this promoter, and this insert. And we might have something that has 2 out of 3 of those things, but not all of them. And so what we would like to work towards is basically being able to make that ideal plasmid for our user and have that customization. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do. It will take us a little while to get there, but I think, in order to serve this community, that's one of the things that we want to work towards is really being able to deliver that ideal plasmid to people to make their science go faster. So we can do this for plasmids, and to some extent, we might be able to do it for viral vectors and antibodies as well. And this is just a case, one example of how we might be able to do that. We're not saying we're definitely going to do this, but this is a fragment, what's called a fragment system. It's from the Broad Institute. We have these plasmids in place right now, and it's basically a kit with all these different parts. In this case, it's the Cas protein along with different promoters and guides. And the way the system would work is using Golden Gate assembly. Somebody could theoretically go to our website and say, I want some combination of all these parts. And using Golden Gate assembly, we'd be able to make that for them and ship it to them, hopefully within a relatively short period of time. So they don't need to order the entire kit. They don't need that one plasmid. We could just make it for them. So this is one way we could do that custom plasmid assembly. And this paper, it's a pretty interesting paper if you want to take a look at it. It just came out this year from the Dench lab at the Broad Institute in cell genomics. One of the things, I went to the CZI Open Science meeting this past June, and I was very pleased to hear in the keynotes talk that without my asking him to, the keynote speaker talked about Addgene as an important part of infrastructure within the scientific community and the open science community. We want to make sure that we maintain that pivotal, that important role within the community. And that's really going to mean working with funders and journals to maintain that status and make sure that we're filling whatever gaps they need. But thinking about that scientific community, we distribute to a lot of academic labs around the world, but the scientific community also includes industry. And, we do have a subsection of our plasmids that are available to industry scientists, but not all of them. We do have limitations due to MTAs. And so that's something that we want to continue to try to reach out to that community and make things more available. We also don't have many resources in the global south. We don't have as many distributions there. And a lot of times those are the labs that need our services the most. So we want to be able to make those be as available to them as possible. And finally, we're not going to do this by ourselves. We really are making effort to reach out to different organizations and companies around the world to really just see how we can work with them to make, whether it's helping them distribute something that they make, or share protocols, or maybe they have distribution networks that we don't have that we want that we'd like to tap into. So that I got a little rushed at the end because I realized I was going long, but I do want to thank you for the invite and letting me talk about Addgene, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So hopefully we have some time for questions now if you have them.
Thank you very much, Eric. That was really insightful, going from end to end. There's some plenty of applauses in the chat from folks, and Sibylle also says an amazing journey and inspiring work. Um, so shall we do have time for questions. So does anyone have anything that they want to kick us off with? Feel free to just speak up or post in chat, and both Sibylle and I will be monitoring. I guess as you're as folks are thinking, I'll kick off with a quick question, because I've seen in chat that both Joseph and Elena have made quite good use of the Plasmid 101 guide, and it's quite interesting to see that, because I think with Reclaim we're also looking at making a kind of our data repository education training as one of our missions. And I believe we've got some folks in Latin America who are quite interested in spearheading that. So we're happy to connect you guys up, so that as a partnership at some point. I know that wasn't quite a question.
Sure. And we do have some, we are making efforts, by the way, to translate some of those ebooks into Spanish as well. I mean, that is one of the things that it's kind of an expensive thing to do, to translate some of our educational content into other languages. But it is something that we are trying to do, because we realize that that's important. If everything's in English, that's not reaching everybody. So that's something that we would like to do more of when we can.
Yeah, definitely. That does sound like something we should all embrace a bit more.
Yeah.
It's a silly question, really. How big is Addgene now in terms of people then? Like, because you're talking about making bespoke plasmids for people as well.
Yep.
Do you have a separate division of people doing that? Or everyone's
Well,
working on a different?
not yet.
Not yet.
That's a service that we're hoping to develop over the next year or so. Addgene depends on whether you count part-time people and interns and co-ops and that kind of thing. But we're roughly between 115 to 120 people now, up from about 8 people when I started in 2004. So it's grown quite a bit. That said, that's for what we do and the number of different services that we offer. Everybody is pretty much at capacity right now, I would say. So as we develop new services, we have to either think about how do we hire new people, how do we afford to hire new people to do those services, or do we need to reduce the resources that we're putting towards some of our current resources and sort of and move them into a different area. And so that's actually one of the things that I'm doing in my role as the director of transformation, is thinking about those types of solutions as we try to do new things.
Must be a tricky challenge, but I'm sure we'll see more of this coming up.
Yep.
Pablo, you had a question.
Yeah, hello, thanks. I want to thank you for the talk. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. I wanted to ask whether there is any possibility to make a short research stays at Addgene. I am a research technician and at academia, sorry, but I am really interested in having opportunities to make short research stays either in other labs or academic labs or industry.
Sure. So as strange as this may sound, we don't have a formal research and development system at Addgene right now. I mean, it is something that's actually in our 5-year strategy to start to develop that.
Okay.
I mean, we've had people over the years off and on who have done what I guess you could call research, particularly as we develop some of our operational work. But we have some things that we're thinking about that we want to do, that particularly in terms of developing some of those bespoke services and that kind of thing. That's really, those types of roles are probably going to rely on whether or not we get grants to do it. Right now, we don't really have anything in our standing like operational budget for that, but we are looking at a number of different grants over the next year or so. that would help us fund those types of positions so that we can ramp up those services while reducing our financial risk, I would say, to do that. So I can't guarantee you anything, but I would say keep an eye on our career page, because if we do get those grants, we will be hiring for those positions. And they would probably be sort of equivalent. I'm not sure whether we would call them postdocs, but they would be close to that because they would probably be tied to that funding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Should I call on Shihan? Yeah, sorry.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry. I'm on my evening commute, so I cannot look at you directly. But I need to ask a question that actually bugs me a lot. So, what is Addgene's official and non-official standing on redistribution? Like, for example, let's say a scientist upstairs asks for a plasmid that I have and I sign the MTA for to use in his or her own research. What does Addgene think on that, on these kind of instances? Let's say it's an Addgene plasmid that they want to utilize in their own research, but it's just upstairs. Like I can just give him a small vial. But
I can tell you that I can tell you that when I did Sci support for Addgene, I probably answered this question every other week for years. It's a good question. Technically, you know, our official answer, as you say, is that that person is, based on that materials transfer agreement, that person is supposed to, they can do one of two things. They can either request that plasmid from us in order to get their own material transfer agreement, but that costs them money, and it's not, you know, as you said, you can just take it upstairs. The best solution for that, so you're not violating the MTA, is for that person to go to the basically just send an email to the depositing scientist who deposited it with us, because they own, and their university owns that plasmid. Addgene does not own any of the plasmids or the rights to the plasmids in the repository. So the best solution really is to say, if your neighbor wants to have that, they can send an email to the depositing lab and say, hello, you know, the Aiden lab downstairs, or, you know, Chihan downstairs has this plasmid. They got it from Addgene. Is it okay if we use it for ourselves? And that way that depositing lab has a record of, okay, this lab, you know, I granted them verbal permission, basically, email permission to do this. So that would be, I would probably be the best case scenario. I'll be very honest. It's not like we can we don't enforce these MTAs. We can't. That's well beyond our ability. You know, we sign them, but we're doing it on behalf of the depositing university. Ultimately, it's up to the depositing university to enforce their MTAs. So that's kind of what our standing is on that. But to not violate that MTA, that person should get permission from the depositing lab. They don't necessarily need to order it from us. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly, Eric. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And I hope your recent custom tailored plasmid production approach will be successful, because that's something that sometimes we need and we don't have time to do it for, or we don't have, let's say, the libraries to construct all of these plasmids for. That would be like a huge plus to the scientific community. That would be really great.
Great. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I mean, following on with both things that Chan said, first is that we've noticed that there are some both UB MTAs, but also open MTAs on Addgene. And it would really be interesting to highlight more of the open MTAs. I suppose this is something you're thinking about in terms of tech transfer and like connecting with industry in the future.
Yeah, we would love to have more. I mean, that's really ultimately how we end up making more things available to industry. And we do have, I can't remember the exact count. So like we do have over 6,000 plasmids that are available to industry. It's usually through either an open MTA or, so most of our COVID stuff most of our COVID plasmids did come in under an open MTA, so anybody can request them. So that was fortunate. But it's really, it can be sometimes hard to convince academic universities to adopt that when they deposit, just because they see distribution of some of these things to industry as a source of revenue themselves. So it's sometimes a hard thing to do. We try, but we're frequently not successful. But we have been making more of an effort this past year to make more plasmids available to industry right from the get-go when they get deposited.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, I mean, Joseph, I've seen in the chat, has 2 questions.
Sure.
Do you want me to read them out, Joseph? Or...
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Do you consider sending plasmids in a cloning expression bacterial strain? So to answer that question, we do actually have we do distribute some plasmids and strains other than DH5 alpha. It really, that's the least expensive and easiest one for us. So that is sort of our default. We do also have, we use stable 3 for plasmids that are prone to recombination. So we do have quite a few in that strain as well. And then we do have a subset of plasmids that are distributed in strains that are very particular for those particular plasmids. Unfortunately, it's like it is quite a bit more work for our lab to make our glycerol stocks in specialized strains. So we try to minimize how frequently we do that. And I'm not sure, so we can't really distribute in expression strains usually, because that can make it difficult to make the glycerol stocks if the stocks are actually overexpressing. One thing that I didn't mention is we do actually have a whole subset of just strains that we distribute as well. So sometimes we'll distribute a plasmid in like an amplification and storage strain, and then you can order the expression strain with it, which I realize is more work. And again, we don't have a lot of strains in the repository. I think it's less than 1,000, but we do have them. The tricky thing with bacterial strains for us is we don't have a really good way to put them through quality control. So again, it's something that we would like to be able to do better. It's just it's pretty resource heavy right now. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I understand that that's something that we could be doing better, and a need that we could fill.
Yeah, because this is one of the ongoing questions in terms of the collections that we distribute for Reclone is more people are interested in the ones that are ready to express as well. And it'll be something that we could try and set up more of a closer collaboration with, and making our like level 0-1 parts into actual expressible parts, and then we could put it into strains, expressible strains or something like that.
Yeah, just to answer your question, I'm happy to stay on longer if other people want to. I have time, but I do feel it's a solvable problem. It's just been a little resource heavy for us. It's something, and so we haven't been able to prioritize it as highly as we'd like. Part of what we have to do is, and one of the harder parts of my job, to tell you the truth, as I work with our strategy team and then our operational teams for implementation, is prioritizing. Because I could give you 50 things that people have asked for over the last 5 years, whether it's expression strains or particular types of virus that we could distribute. Like one of the other delivery viral systems is rabies virus. We've had a PI who's been desperate for us to share his rabies viral vectors for years, but I'll tell you very honestly, like the customs for those are a nightmare. It's just a lot harder. And you know, it's a great system that he has, but every decision that we make as a nonprofit organization and as a repository is, you know, we have to prioritizing things based on demand and based on how much it's going to cost us. And sometimes we have to, you know, we have to say no to things that I really wish we could say yes to, just because it will cost us ultimately. If it's too much of a money loser, or if then we have to really think about how much risk we're willing to absorb. And those are decisions that every repository needs to make, I think. Particularly if your model is to be self-funding in the long term and self-sustaining. And that is, you know, this is like real talk right now. is that that can lead to some hard decisions, because I really wish we could say yes to everything. And we do say yes to, I would say, the vast majority of requests in terms of depositing. But one of the things that we'll have to think about with any bespoke services, like what is the threshold that we're willing to get to? Because ultimately we have to pass some of these costs